are visiting. Good evening, you guys. So this week didn't exactly go to plan. For those of you guys that follow me on Instagram or my other channel, you may have a little bit of a better understanding of what's been going on, but I promised that I would explain a little more in a vlog, and so this is going to be my attempt at letting you guys into that. And you know, it's not going to be this typical perfectly beautiful video that I normally make. I promise there are some pretty moments, and I'm going to try my best to infuse details and the time that I did get to spend doing the things that I love when I can. And at the end, I'm going to delve into the beginning of the week, because it really did start out quite normal and lovely, and I want to share that with you. But I know the majority of you are probably here to hear about the more exciting moments of this week. So I'm going to talk about that first. If you can't tell, I'm feeling a little bit awkward about it, and I don't really know why. I think it's just because this is something I don't often talk about. YouTube and crafting videos has always been a space that is an escape from being a chronically ill person, and it's somewhere where I like to be not defined by that, because for so much of my life that's been the main defining factor of who I am, and here it hasn't been. And as I'm saying that, I'm realizing that I don't think I've ever flat out said what is wrong with me. I guess I should do that. So I have something called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It is a genetic disorder, and it basically means you are very, very stretchy. It affects your collagen and your ligaments. I have a lot of issues with dislocations in my shoulders and my hips and my fingers. A lot of you ask about my rings and why I wear them or where you can get them, and they are actually braces and splints to help keep my fingers in place. And you can find them on Etsy if you're interested. They're called silver ring splints, but I wear them to keep my hands functioning. But one of the more difficult aspects of this disease, for me at least, it affects everybody very differently. But I have something called gastroparesis, which basically means my stomach does not know how to stomach, and it makes eating and sustaining myself with nutrition very, very difficult, and in my case, almost impossible. So about 1.5 years ago at this point, I had a surgery to have a feeding tube placed. I don't think I've said that here. I'm not sure if those of you here know about that, and I think I've only really mentioned it once or twice on my other channel. So all the food I cook, everything I bake and share with you all here, I normally can't eat. Sometimes I can have a bite or two, but it is a calculated decision because it's not enjoyable to eat. And you know, I'm not gonna get into that. I'll let you guys look it up if you want to. But so yeah, so I have a feeding tube. and that's how I get my main nutrition. I'm gonna delve a little more into the type I have and some more specifics later when that's necessary, but for the purpose of this video and for understanding what's been going on with this week, it's important to know I have a genetic disorder. My body does not work the way that everybody else's does, and it hasn't my entire life. And sometimes it just is a little more broken than normal, and you have to fix it. And this week was just a particularly full week of trying to manage my illness. So that happens. That just happens sometimes. But it started out very normal. I began this vlog on Friday morning. I was very, very busy in the kitchen working. Our blackberries are reaching their final days, so I've been trying to get as much work in with them as I can before they're gone until next year. And it was just a lovely, lovely day working and crafting and doing all the things that I love, but I'll get into that a little more later. Because that evening, my feeding tube broke. And that just happens. They don't last forever. I have had to have them changed 5 times now. They typically last about 6 months. My body is angsty with feeding tubes and it's a little more aggressive on them. I have a lot of spasms in my gastric system and they just break a lot. And this one actually has lasted me a long time. It lasted since January. I was very impressed with it, but it broke, and so I needed to fix it. But it was just my luck that it happened on a Friday evening before a holiday weekend. And because I have a bit more of a complex tube, I have to have a surgery in order to get it replaced. So I have something called a GJ tube. It goes into my stomach and extends down into my jejunum, which is my intestine. So when I run food or nutrition, it bypasses my stomach and goes into my intestine, essentially kind of bypassing part of the problem with my gastroparesis and making it a lot more manageable for me to get nutrition. And on top of this, I also have some weird anatomy. Because of my Ehlers-Danlos, I have a lot of organ prolapsing. So my organs kind of have fallen out of where they're supposed to be, and they're very floppy, and so my stomach is not in the right place. And so when they do tube exchanges, they have to do it under or in interventional radiology. And you know, everybody is different, each hospital is different, but just for the basis of this story and understanding, my tube is the more complex one and my body is just a little weird, and the placements can sometimes be pretty challenging. And because I have so many gastric spasms, sometimes the tube flips up in on itself or just makes it a little more difficult for the surgeons to fix. So it's not just an easy in and out type thing typically. And actually, because of my wacky anatomy, when I went in to get the surgery the first time to have the feeding tube placed, they couldn't do it because my liver was in front of my stomach. And so I woke up and they sent me home and I had to come back a week later. So it's always just exciting and difficult with me. I like to make people's lives in the medical world just that much harder. But anyways, it was a holiday weekend, so I couldn't call my doctor until Tuesday, which would have been, at that point, 4 days without proper nutrition. Which is fine. That happens. That's not the longest I've been without proper nutrition, and while it is tiring, it's fine. But come Tuesday, I had called, I think, the Sunday or Monday prior just to get in the voicemail box, so they do call you earlier, and sometimes that gets you an edge on scheduling. So they called me back on Tuesday. Often I'll get an appointment either for that day or the next day, and that's what I was expecting. But they called me and told me that I had to get a COVID test before I could come in for surgery, and that it had to come back within 24 hours, be negative, and then 2 days later we could schedule the surgery. Which is all fine and well, and I completely understand why they would have that protocol, and honestly, while I was there, I was really appreciative of it because it made me feel so much more comfortable being there. But it did come as a surprise, and you know, as I said before, at that point I was 4 days without proper nutrition, and that just extended that timeline quite a bit more and made it so that my entire week was going to be lost to this endeavor, which is fine, it happens. But I just was a little taken aback by it and surprised. But anyways, Tuesday, I was talking to this very kind lady. She was so helpful, and she was able to help me set up an appointment the very next day to get a COVID test. However, just to further complicate things, that day, Wednesday, I had a heart appointment that had been moved multiple times and that I really needed to go to. I have a couple of heart problems. It's another part of EDS. It does sometimes do some funny things to your heart. They're really not a big deal, and they're well managed now, but it is something that I like to keep it on tabs on. So we were trying to fumble and figure out how to get a COVID test that day, because if I wasn't able to get a COVID test on Wednesday, I wasn't going to be able to get that surgery that week. So we were scrambling, trying to figure out a way to keep both my heart appointment and the COVID test for that day. Unfortunately, they were at very far ends, opposite areas, and it was just a challenge. My heart appointment was a little too middle of the day, and at first she wasn't really sure if she could even get me a test early enough or late enough to make it. But finally she was able to find a way to maneuver a 7:55 appointment for the test, and that worked perfectly. It gave me just enough time. So it is about 6:30 and I'm about to go leave to go get COVID tested.
Annabel Margaret. Okay, here's some information. Thank you. Look that later. Here's a nasal swab, so you need to lower your tongue. It is 10 seconds. Okay, towards your head down. Good job. Your result will be ready in 24 to 48 hours. Okay. Woo.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The test wasn't bad. It wasn't pleasant, but it was fine. But once it was done, drove home, was home for about an hour, not quite, and then I was off again. So it's about 10 now and I'm on my way to a heart appointment. When I found out I had to go get a COVID test, the only time they could do it, which would still allow me to go in and get my feeding tube fixed this week, was this morning. And so we left really, really early in order to be able to keep this appointment that was set up. I was supposed to have my heart checked back in March. One of the medications I'm on to help control symptoms of gastroparesis has some issues with hearts, and it can cause something called a prolonged QT. And so I'm supposed to get it checked every 6 months or so. And now it's almost been about a year. Once the virus started, we weren't really able to go into the doctors anymore, and these appointments got kicked, and it really wasn't worth the risk to go in. But now I'm starting to get palpitations and some weirdness that could be fine, but I would prefer to kind of know what's going on. And so that's where I'm headed to go check on that. But yeah, busy day. Okay, so just got out of there. Basically everything I already know, nothing new. They are going to have me wear a monitor for 2 weeks, so that is something you all get to look forward to, a nice, beautiful monitor on my chest, but they're gonna ship it to me, so I probably won't have it by the time this vlog ends, but yeah, that was about it. Now to go drive another hour home. Spent all day in the car and in doctor's offices. What a way to spend a day. All right, I'll see you guys when I'm back home. Once I got home, I was pretty tired. It had been a very long day, and I'd been up since 5, been pretty much all over Northern Virginia and Maryland, and it just was a long one. And it at that point was 5 days without proper nutrition. So I was tired, but I didn't really have much else to do that day, so I decided to film a video. I wanted to keep up with a posting schedule, and honestly, I had enough in me to sit down for 15 minutes, talk about a video that I hadn't planned to film, but I'm actually very happy with how it turned out. And then I just kind of spent the remaining part of the day editing and working on that. Thankfully, the video uploaded without any issues. Recently, I've been having a lot of problems with the Wi-Fi and uploads just stopping. Where I live, the Wi-Fi is not that great. It's the only Wi-Fi we can get, but the upload speeds are terrible. Videos that are over 15-16 minutes take like 20 hours to upload, and anything less than that is a minimum of 7 or 8. So it was fingers crossed that it would work, because when they don't upload and I want them to upload on a certain day, then I have to drive out in town and sit outside a coffee shop and see if that'll work, but they just are a pain sometimes, and luckily it worked out and went off without any hitches. And so the following day, on Thursday, I finalized that upload and sat on answering comments for a little bit. I started doing that recently, just for the first hour, answering comments, and it has been so lovely. I had to stop answering comments on that channel, honestly, about a year ago, and now where it's at, it's very hard to keep up with them now, it just every day, but I can sit there for the first hour and keep up with comments, and it's been so lovely, and it's such a good way to connect with you guys again, which, as you have probably heard me say too many times now in these videos, I've been really missing. So that was nice, and that was kind of all I had in me that day. That was now day 6 without proper nutrition, and I was just tired. And that morning I got the news that my COVID test was negative, so I could go in on Friday to have the surgery. However, it was another 5 a.m. wake up. I'm an early riser. I am, but I like to get up with the sun, not hours before it. Except for in the winter. We're not quite there yet. The sun is still getting up at a reasonable wake up time, so it's not really feeling the 5 a.m. wake up, especially because I was a little physically hungry at that point. But anyways, the next day was another 5 a.m. wake up to get into downtown Baltimore for surgery. My feeding tube exchanges and such are always done in the main campus building, and that is kind of at the heart of the city, so it does take a bit of time to get through with traffic and all, but honestly, there really wasn't all that much. It was very surprising, and when I got into Baltimore and into the hospital, it was almost silent. It was really, honestly, very surreal. Like I said before, I've been to hospitals and doctors' offices quite a bit the last couple of weeks, but I hadn't been out to Hopkins since the pandemic first began. Normally there's just always people and you're bumping elbows with somebody, and it was just quiet and empty. And as much as that's kind of what I would prefer to see at this moment in time with the pandemic, it was still just very unsettling, kind of, and just different from what I'm used to. Anyways, I got checked in, and I sat down in a waiting room that had 2 other people in it. This waiting room, sometimes you can't even get a seat. There are so many people. And it was absolutely silent. They weren't allowing family members or anybody to be in there with you, which is fine. I don't normally like having family or people with me when I go in for these things. I just think it's easier to go in and get it done. But because there was really not a lot of people there, the wait was really no time at all. And then I got back into the area for prep. Now, I am a bit of a weird patient. I don't really like anesthesia. I'm not somebody that enjoys all that. And typically for these surgeries, they do them under twilight sedation, which basically means you're awake, kind of, but not really. I've had it a couple of times when I was getting ports placed, and I had that one, the feeding tube was initially placed, but I don't like going under sedation. My body doesn't respond very well to it, and I don't like numbing things. I get this shaky response. Besides, beyond all of that, anesthesia or even just twilight sedation, you're tired and groggy the whole rest of your day, and you lose your entire day with that, and I'm not so fond of that. I much prefer going in, doing the exchange, and getting to go home and still have my day to do with it whatever I please, instead of going home and just sleeping all day. So I was an easy patient for the nurses. Sometimes surgeons really don't know how to respond to a patient being on the operating table in this regard, being fully aware and awake. And I'm rather inquisitive in those situations. I like looking at the monitors and seeing what's going on. I like asking questions, and I like to be involved, and some surgeons fully ignore you. I don't like those surgeons. I like the ones that talk to me and let me know what's going on and show me my weird broken feeding tube when it comes out. Now, for any normal individual, I probably would not recommend going in without anesthesia. It's not fun or comfortable, and there are quite a few moments that are a little alarming. Surgery is aggressive. Surgeons are aggressive with their movements, and that's something that when you're under twilight sedation, you can just ignore. It's just happening. That's the best way I can describe it. But when you're not sedated, you're fully aware, and it can be a little unsettling. Also, GJ tubes, because it's a long tube that goes into your stomach and into your intestines. It feels like a snake. It feels like there is a snake slithering around in your stomach, or a whole bunch of worms just freaking out in your stomach. And it's really bizarre. The first time I ever experienced it unsedated, it was very alarming. I mean, it was fine. You just sit there through it, but it's a little like, all right, that's what's happening right now to my body. Whoa. And beyond that, it is a bit painful. It doesn't really feel good. And, thankfully at this point I am pretty well aware of what to expect, so going into it isn't a problem. But I wouldn't recommend it to the normal person, I would probably say. And all the nurses think I'm a weirdo for doing it that way, but as I said in the beginning, it gives me the whole rest of my day, and I really don't like the way my body reacts to those things, and it makes me lose more time, and it's worth being uncomfortable for half an hour to an hour, depending on how difficult the exchange is, because my anatomy's wacky. It's worth that to me. And at this point, there are other things that I deal with that are worse than that, so it's really not that big a deal. Besides, the surgeries are so cool. You're laying out on an x-ray table and you get to see your skeleton and then maneuvering inside your body and the contrast dyes. It's just wild. It's wild stuff. And I really enjoy being a part of it and watching it. I mean, how often do you get to lay on a table and look at your skeleton and organs? And luckily this time I had a lovely group of nurses. They were so lovely. I love nurses. Let me just say this. Nurses are some of the best people on this planet. They are always so incredibly kind and helpful and funny. They just brighten up my day. I always leave hospitals and situations like this feeling happy and great just because of nurses and their lovely banter. So I had such a good group of them, and they were so kind and funny, and it was just a good day in the OR. it was a pretty easy surgery given what was going on. Actually, it's one of the best exchanges I've ever had. It was really easy. My tube was still in the right place. It just was busted, so they exchanged it. And when it's just busted, that makes it a lot easier to do the exchange. But yeah, once you're out of surgery, when you don't do anesthesia, you are so easy for the exit nurses. They don't even know what to do with you, because normally you're supposed to lay in the recovery bay waking up, but you know, I roll out there, I'm ready to go. So they did the final checks, make sure I was normal, wasn't bleeding or whatever. And then I got dressed and got to go home. And that was pretty much the end of that crazy week. I was able to start running food again, and I had gone a week without nutrition, but that happens. That was longer than I would prefer it to happen. Typically, my max happiness is just a couple of days when it comes to trying to fix something that's broken, but times are weird right now, and it had to go a little different. And, you know, as I've said, these weeks do just happen. It's part of living with a chronic illness. You don't always get to have things go exactly to plan. I had initially planned a very busy work week where I was gonna get ahead and have all these things done and planned and started, and I didn't get to do any of it. But that's okay. I did what I could in the time that I had. I did actually get a video up, and I did a lot of the behind the scenes work that, you know, was not really film worthy, but I got that done. And, you know, before my feeding tube broke, the week started out really very beautifully, with quite a bit of experimentation while I tried to keep up with the last of the berry harvests. I was so deeply immersed in all the things that I loved, experimenting with things and crafting new things whenever they came to mind. And I found so much fulfillment in those days alone that I was okay not having all the rest of them go exactly to plan. Besides, at the end of the day, all that really matters in these situations is your perspective on it and what you're willing to make of it. I would imagine for a lot of people that are healthy and typically don't deal with health problems, this kind of a week would be very unbalancing. On paper, going without nutrition for 7 days, having to get a COVID test, waking up early, going to multiple doctor's offices, getting some interesting reports, and having surgery all in 1 week. Surgery that you hadn't planned would be unbalancing, and I understand that. I get it. When my health stuff first began going off the rails, the first time I was in the ER for this stuff, I remember it feeling like such a big event, but a couple of years later down the line, I was in the ER all the time, and it was just part of how taking care of my health was. You know, it wasn't a surprise to me. It just was how my days went. And this is just kind of like that. Some weeks just go this way, and that's okay. I don't normally film them. This was the first time that I made any effort to, and I did that in part because I do want to try to make more consistent vlogs and things here. But also, I made a post on Instagram talking about, you know, a video is going to be late and there's a bit of a change of plans with how things are going. I really didn't initially intend on filming all of this week, but the response I got was so alarming. I guess people were very alarmed that this was my situation and were so worried and couldn't believe that my week was going this way, which was all very kind and sweet, and I can't tell you guys how much I appreciate your support. I had so many well wishes on Friday for my surgery and so many just beautiful, kind, supportive comments that really helped so much, because let me tell you, I was not happy that this was my week. I was rather annoyed and I didn't want to spend it this way, but the main response I got was kind of horror that this was my week. People were very taken aback by this situation, and it kind of put perspective on this again to me, that this isn't normal. Most people don't have weeks like this, and I just figured that I could do a bit of a service to everybody else in chronic illness communities by showing that even somebody who lives a very perfect or beautiful, normal life, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff can be pretty hectic and stop you in your tracks and really change the trajectory of your week, your month, the foreseeable time ahead. All just, with the snap of your fingers. It's very unpredictable, and that's just how it is. At this point, I've been sick for the majority of my life. And I've been battling all of this for a very long time. So this is normal to me. It's not surprising to have a week like this. It really is just annoying because I have to shift my work. And that's it. I'm very grateful to have created a profession for myself that allows me to work within a week like this very easily. It doesn't derail everything. I can still get work done. And I also have the freedom to shift stuff when I need to. So, while they are annoying, that's really just it. Annoying. And, like I said, I really don't normally film weeks like this because I do prefer to keep this channel on a happier note. And I created it in part to keep showing myself all of the beauty that is in my life. Because these weeks happen more often than not. Well, maybe not this kind of week. This week was a little more than normal, but every day there is a struggle or a battle or something wrong that takes away from what is going on. I dislocate constantly, don't feel good the majority of the time. And back in the day, I used to be very hyper aware of what is wrong with my life, just constantly. I wasn't happy, and I only thought about what I wanted to change. I didn't ever look for what I had right in front of me until I started making videos. My life has changed so much since I opened that door and gave myself this opportunity to document all the beauty in my life and all the wonderful things that were right outside my door and right in front of me. And over this last year, I've grown a lot. My practice has expanded in ways that I would have never expected, and I am healthier than I have been in years. And that's all because of my feeding tube. I've said before, I used to be attached to 6 pumps. I relied on a lot of machinery to keep me moving. And now I only rely on 1, and it's not even attached to me at all hours of the day. I have not been this free in years. On that note, I am gonna continue to keep this channel bright and beautiful. I won't be taking you guys to all of my doctor's appointments, but whenever there are weeks like this, instead of just not posting, I'll take you guys along a little bit more than, nothing. But I want this channel to remain a place that is beautiful and freeing and a place where I document everything that fills my day with joy, not everything that makes it a bit hindering. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you're all doing well, and I hope to see you all soon. Bye.